Hi, it's Mike Davis. Thanks for watching. This is the second video for the most recent Ethics Lunch and Learn. Art Signal and I are working hard to make sure that we continue providing some ethics content and ethics training. And so this is a safe distancing version. So until we can actually have Ethics Lunch and Learn again, this is an opportunity to get together or at least to watch this video and learn something. So the program has one video before this, and then this video, and then you take a short test quiz. So thanks for joining us. Today's session is Incompetence is Bliss, the Dunning-Kruger effect. So whenever we actually do Ethics Lunch and Learn, we always want to summarize the basic principles of ethics. The core principles, the main principle for all of us at BHVH is doing what is good and what is right. And so here are some core principles. We call these the prima facies. Actually, everybody calls them the prima facies. And there may be more or less depending on where you're at, but this is pretty much the norm. The very core principles: autonomy, that you get to make your own decisions as long as you have capacity. Beneficence, that we do good. We should be focused on doing good for patients. Non-maleficence, that's the flip side of doing good. That is, do no harm. Then truth is the next one, that we speak and act truthfully. And then justice, that we treat all people fairly. The next section right here, this box here, is the University of Washington 4-box paradigm. And it basically has 4 things that you should always talk about whenever you're going to do an ethics consultation. So whenever we do whenever we actually cover some of an actual ethics situation, we'll talk about it from these angles. So the first one is medical indications. What is actually going on for a patient that gives rise to an ethics consult, medically speaking? How sick is the patient? Are they expected to die, expected to live? Do they have a terminal illness? Those kinds of things. The next thing we want to cover in any ethics consult is, what are the patient preferences? What do they want as far as their treatment goes? So say a few years ago, a person had DNAR, or do not resuscitate, tattooed on their chest. So that was a fairly clear demonstration of preferences, and yet even at that, there was some debate. The next thing is quality of life. What would be in every situation, depending on what preferences or what options you chose as far as patient preferences go, what would be the quality of life for each outcome? So if you choose option A, what is the quality of life? If you choose option B, what is the quality of life? And then finally, contextual features. So those are the main things that we talk about in all the ethics consults. So moving on to the actual content, I love this quote from Richard Feynman, a physicist, one of the most brilliant physicists of the 20th century. The first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. That sets the stage for the next slide and for the actual content. So, as you may have seen in the previous video, there was a gentleman who decided he was going to rob a couple of banks. And based on the fact that what he decided, he knew that lemon juice was a component of invisible ink. So before going to rob the banks, he covered himself with lemon juice. He was sure that this would make him invisible. No, serious, this is a factual, actual thing. Feel free to look it up. Well, these two researchers, Dunning and Kruger, were so amazed that someone could think that lemon juice would, because it's used in invisible ink, that it could provide actual invisibility. they decided Man, we got to look at this. So they did a bunch of tests, a bunch of research, a bunch of small studies, and what they discovered was been called the Dunning-Kruger effect. People always overestimate their knowledge on a subject. They are certain they know more about subjects than they do. The only exception to this was people who actually do know a lot. Those people tend to underestimate their knowledge. So if you do know a lot, say about accounting or money, you'll probably realize that you don't know that much and you'll underestimate your knowledge. And then thirdly, when we overestimate our knowledge, we can make bad decisions, and those can cause harm. I love this XKCD comic, An Engineer's Syllogism. The engineer: I am good at understanding numbers. 2. The stock market is made of numbers. 3. Therefore wow, where did all my money just go? This is what happens when we overestimate our knowledge. So, there are some examples of what happens when we overestimate knowledge. So, Dunning and Kruger discovered that there were 3 common themes for people who have who've fallen under the spell of the Dunning-Kruger effect. First, they have this illusion of superiority, that they have increased knowledge of things, of fields of knowledge that maybe they know, like in the XKCD cartoon, that they have some special knowledge about money that qualifies them to go play on the stock market, and they don't. They also have a lack of metacognition. They don't really understand all the things that are going on. They may not understand that just because lemon juice is a component of invisible ink, that covering themselves with lemon juice does not make them invisible. And then thirdly, incompetence is a big component of people when they are making when they've fallen under the Dunning-Kruger effect. Now, what became clear is in Hurricane Katrina, there was a lot of effect of a lot of Dunning-Kruger effects, and indeed this is documented in the Disaster Threat and the Dunning-Kruger effect, a really amazing report from the Naval Postgraduate School. 76%, 80%, and then at the World Trade Center, there was a large number of indicators of Dunning-Kruger effect, and together combined the impact of Dunning-Kruger. And so how exactly did that happen in those places? Well, Dunning-Kruger suggests that the Dunning-Kruger led to actually more deaths. So the research identified 73% of those respondents who chose to not evacuate to safety prior to landfall of Hurricane Katrina showed positive indicators for Dunning-Kruger effects, leading to terrible outcomes. And then as well, for the Twin Towers on 9/11, a lot of people were mere feet from safely evacuating the hazards of the towers, and some survivors recounted the choice that others made to head back up the stairs and go back up to their offices based on some faulty Dunning-Kruger advice from people who were supposed to be in the know, broadcasting overhead. And so the author of that study writes, whether due to inadequate risk perception or overconfidence due to illusionary superiority, the failure of a person to recognize the extent of his or her inadequacy adversely affects situational awareness of threats. So ethics in Dunning-Kruger. Now, ethics isn't just focused on right or wrong, but also on how we get there. People believe we know enough or more than enough about areas where we have little knowledge, and we may make decisions based on limited knowledge and also to protect our own self-esteem. We don't want to feel ashamed. We don't want to have to ask for advice. We don't want to have to indicate our personal ignorance. And so we make bad decisions, as previously shown. We need moral humility. That is, awareness of our ignorance, to learn from those who do actually know a field of knowledge, finances, or things like that. For instance, in the COVID situation that we're undergoing right now, the resistance to wearing masks. We don't know what the person around us has been exposed to. They don't know what they've been exposed to. And so the assumption that everything's all clear is a dangerous assumption. And the assumption that we can all go back to the beaches and everything and that everything is past. Art was telling me earlier about going to Home Depot, and 80% of people had stopped wearing their masks. And that's true with my own experience. So, and then the third thing of moral humility is using second order thinking, which is to say, don't assume. G.K. Chesterton talked about the second order thinking. He said, do not remove a fence until you know why it was put up in the first place. And that's corollary is, if a fence exists, there's likely a reason for it. In his example, removing the fence without finding the reason for its existence is first order thinking. And first order thinking only considers consequences. Second order thinking looks at the consequences of the consequences. When we jump ahead of things without really thinking them through, without wondering why a fence was put up in the first place, when we just assume it's okay to remove the fence, we pose a risk to ourselves, ethically and in every other way, and to our organizations. We set ourselves up for ethical concerns and potential ethical failure. That's it. I hope you'll do some second order thinking and that you'll exercise moral humility. Search out for more understanding and fill in gaps where you experience gaps. For both Art and myself, thanks for watching. We appreciate it, and we look forward to a day when we can kind of sit around the tables again and have a nice meal. Take that test now. Appreciate y'all watching. Bye now.